Mask nerds, welcome back to another review video. Today, surgical masks, double masks, and mask fitters. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet. For those new to the channel, I'm Aaron. I've been using real scientific instrumentation and my background in aerosol science to test and evaluate masks, help provide context and information about what are all the terms of masks, with the end goal of just getting more protective masks on people's face as fast as we can to protect them from COVID. For also, just FYI, all the information I'm showing in here, all the masks I'm showing, either I purchased them myself or were donated, but I have no financial obligations to any of the companies you're talking about. I'm completely independent. I don't take money from them. I don't want to take money from them. None of the links I'm showing are affiliate links, so there's no financial obligation here. This is just an independent review of masks, so there's no BS in here. Also a reminder that all the data that is available will be linked in the Google Drive. So there's a whole Google Drive to keep track of all that data. There's pictures of all this stuff. And for full data transparency, if you go back to the live mask testing, that's where the actual test data came from. So if you want to see how I tested it live, just go look at those live video streams. It's just, so that's all about data transparency. I don't want anyone to think that I'm trying to pull the wool over your eyes. It's all about data transparency, and I'll talk about some limitations of my method. So today's topics are my crappy pressure drop measurement. I'll talk about what I've been doing, how I made it slightly better, but kind of where I want to go with that eventually. I'll cover double masking. I got some test data I talked about in the last video, but I actually have some test data now to talk about what are the pros and cons and how do I think it stacks up relative to other respirators and mask solutions that are out there. And also talk about mask fitters, ways to use surgical masks, and kind of have a couple examples here, Fix the Mask, Badger Mask, and the Bellis 3D version. So I'll give some pros and cons and kind of show some test data that came from that. So hang around. I'm going to try to keep this one under 20 minutes. One of the questions I often get asked is, what is pressure drop and how do I measure it in the system? So pressure drop is just the resistance of airflow to go through the mask. Well, the higher the number, the less breathable the mask is. And the lower the number, the more breathable it is. In other words, like how hard is it to breathe in the mask? When I started this project 6 months ago, I was just looking for an easy way to show that some masks were easier to breathe than others. I wasn't after like really precision data because, well, at the time I was just trying to find masks and show people the data as quickly as I can. And as I've collected more data, people have started looking, mining that data. And I've always warned them, like, that pressure drop measurement's kind of crappy. I'll explain why. So how I was doing this is I would don the mask. I have the test port probed to a pressure gauge, and this is the actual one I use. This is a MagnaHelix pressure gauge, and it measures from 0 to 2 inches of water. 2 inches of water is a measurement of pressure drop. It's how much pressure you need to lift a column of water 1 inch. So that's 1 inch of water. It's pretty low pressure. It's quite a small amount relative, like say a PSI or something. So how I started doing this is that, so as an example, if you watch me breathe in this mask, if I breathe in slowly or I breathe in heavily, you see you get very different values. And that's because there's a restriction to the mask, and the harder you breathe, the harder it is to breathe in. So what I was doing originally is that I would simulate from 0 lung capacity, so I'd breathe out, and then 2 seconds I would try to go to full capacity, and I would simulate it with my hands. So something like this. And then I would look at the video and see what was the pressure that I had during that time. And I tried to breathe at a constant rate. Well, it turns out that method's kind of crap. And the reason is, well, one, it depends on my lung volume, how accurately I can simulate from 0 to this in 2 seconds. And it was actually getting to be kind of a hard measurement to do. And my data was kind of all over the place. So I came up with another method that you'll see, and it's called in the data column, it's like the time to breathe at 0.25 inches of water. So my the next method that I came up with is this one, in which I'm going to have to look at it at the same time. But what I was doing is timing how long it would take to me to breathe from empty lung to full lung while holding 0.25 inches of pressure drop. So here, I'll give you an example of that. Oh, too high. Let me try one more time. Okay, so then I would just time how long to do it. I'm doing multiple measurements. So that's a great way and much more scientific method in terms of giving me repeatable data. It's a lot better than my previous method. And I can show you the same measurement, let's say with a surgical mask, and you'll see that what's going to happen is at the same pressure drop, the surgical mask breathes a lot easier, mostly because most of the air is going around the surgical mask, but we'll use it as an example here. So I'll don the surgical mask, and I'll do the same measurement again. I have to look at it at the same time as you all so that I can do it. So here we go. You can see it was much quicker. It took me probably half the time. And so that's another measurement. Now the problem is, like, how do I correlate and intersect those two measurements back from my old measurement to this new measurement? Well, what I'm going to use is my control mask, my N100. And I had historically got typically 0.45 inches of water in my 1 to 2 inch pressure measurement. So what I've done is I've included the control mask as part of my breathe to 0.25 inches of water, how long it takes as there. And I'm just going to set this at 0.45 inches of water. Is that the real number? Well, it's kind of made up anyways. This test isn't great. So my pressure drop measurement sucks. But at least we'll have a slightly better version of that. And we're going to scale that to be 0.45, just so it's historically compatible with all the old data. In the meantime, it's going to get better. I want you to introduce my replacement, Aaron 2.0. He is better in every way. Talks way less, really, like just not at all, really. And so this is a 3D printed version of me. I'm going to use this for pressure drop measurements. So I can have a mask fitted, and Aaron 2.0 is actually a cyborg. He has a hole in the back of his head. You could just insert a tube here, and we can pull vacuum. So what I'm going to do here is I have an insert a PVC tube. I'm not finished assembling it yet. I'm going to insert a PVC tube, seal it to the face. I have a vacuum pump and a rotometer, and I'll use this Magni Hela gauge, and I'll have controlled flow rate. So then I'll do like 1 CFM flow through the mask on what is my own face. It's 3D printed scale 1:1. Looks just like me. To get a better measurement. Now, there's going to be a little bit of complexity about that because I won't be able to feel how well the mask sits. And for some masks and some respirators, what I'm going to do is just use double-sided sticky tape to secure it to the face so that I get basically a perfect seal, because I won't be able to feel if it's leaking when I'm doing this experiment, because Aaron 2.0 has no feelings. So that will be a little bit more control. So I'll go through the backlog of masks and test them all on Aaron 2.0 to give an updated pressure drop measurement. So that will come, but that's going to take me a little bit of time. So for those that are wondering what the pressure drop measurement came from, that's the history of it. It's not a great measurement. I say that all the time. Like, this will be a much better controlled measurement. My previous measurement's pretty garbage, but they were just meant to show like the range of masks. Like if a mask was like 0.6 and a mask was 0.2, I can tell you that they are very different in terms of how easy they are to breathe. Whether that actual value is plus or minus, 0.05 inches of water or something like that, well, it's hard to say. So anyways, say hello to Mask Aaron 2.0. If you next video comes on, it's just an hour-long video of you staring at him. He has become sentient and has taken over, and it is what it is. I accept my robot lord. In this case, Aaron 2.0. Okay. Next up, we're going to cover double masking. So in the last video, I had talked about what was double masking. I'll review that here again as well, and we'll kind of talk through the pros and cons, and I have some test data this time, so that's really exciting. So first, what is double masking? Well, the concept is, and I'll repeat it here, the surgical mask is commonly available, and the surgical mask has the magical technology that we need to solve this problem. It has a melt-blown electrostatic filter media. We really need filter media. We talk about protective masks. We talk about how COVID's sparing, whether it's droplets or aerosols. Guess what? This material works for both. That's why it's such a great solution. If it's droplet, this works. If it's aerosol, this works. It's like well-fitting masks solve both problems. And so I think the data is pretty clear that aerosol spread is a large contributor to it as well. So we do need protective masks as well. So this has the magic material in it. Now we compare that to a cloth mask. Cloth masks, guess what? Don't have that. They don't have that electrostatic material in them. So how can we combine them to make something that is good? So for example, if I take this Lutima surgical mask here and I test it, and I've tested a few different times over different days, I've gotten data to range from 50% to 76%. And that just is so face fit specific, like how well I can get it to seal. And if I hold my jaw at just the right position, whatever, they're leaky. They're not great. The range has been 51 to 71%. So this has the material, it doesn't have the fit. What if I could take something that does provide a good fit on top of that? So you can take like a standard cloth mask. In this case, this is just a 2-layer cotton mask, no polypropylene layer in between or anything like that. So just this 2-layer cotton mask. So if I go ahead and stick that on top of it, I go from 76, an average, like let's say 50 to 70% with the surgical mask, up to 91%. Well, that's actually really good. So does double masking work? The answer is yes. Is it the best solution? Well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So if I take the same Lutima surgical mask and I use a different cloth mask, in this case I'm going to use this Allele. They're a cycling brand. I bought these way back in the early pandemic. Good cycling brand, pretty cool little clothing manufacturer. They made this nice mask. Now if I use this mask plus this surgical mask, which no nose clip on this mask, so you can see that not much seal on the nose, I got to 81%. Where's the air coming out? I can feel it blasting and jetting right through my eyeballs there. So does double masking work all the time? Well, you need the right combinations of equipment. We need the MacGyver solution again. So yes, it can. Does it work great all the time? Well, not really, actually. So let's talk about what are the penalties that we're doing for this, and in general, and that's pressure drop. And so that's been the penalty for doing this type of method. So if I wear just this surgical mask, I get between, and again, my pressure drop measurement's kind of crappy, but between 0.2 and 0.18 and 0.3 is the ranges that I've measured using my newer and then crappier measurements. So I get that on there. I get the mask on. So what's the penalty? Pressure drop. So this mask, as tested, had a pressure drop of 0.47 in like kind of scaled factor. If I compare that number to my Moldex N100 mask, which is kind of hard to breathe in, 0.45. This is actually harder to breathe in than an N100. And that's been one of the things that's so confusing to me, that the CDC and other people have recommended this, yet don't recommend N95s, because the argument against N95s has been, don't get an N95, they're so hard to breathe in. And they have to be fitted, which I covered in the last video. You don't really need to be fitted. And they're so hard to breathe in, but you're recommending something that's actually harder to breathe in than a N95. In fact, my N95 8210 comes in at 0.24, 8210 is 0.25 inches of water. So this is twice as hard, almost twice as hard to breathe than this. In one of my, classic mask, lab mask, this came in at 0.230. So this recommended solution, which is giving about 90% filtration efficiency, is twice as hard to breathe in as an N95 or this. So can you get protection with a double mask? Absolutely. Is it the best solution? I don't think so. Now, when I tested with the Allele mask, I of course got lower pressure drop. With the Allele mask plus that surgical mask, I got about 0.27. But I also only got 80% filtration efficiency, so that kind of goes hand in hand. If you have leakage, it goes around the mask, not through the mask, and it's going to just find the easiest path, and then you're going to get a lower pressure drop. I also tested with the FG300CI. That's an Everyday Beauty Lab, offers that surgical mask, and again I got about 0.33 and 0.17. I also tested it with some other masks I have around. In this case I had tested it with like the Zehushi, which is like a non-rated mask, which highlights another issue with this message, which is that if you don't use a good surgical mask, then it doesn't work that well. So this is not the Zehushi, but we'll pretend it is. So I donned this mask and then put this mask over on top of it, and for this measurement I just did pressure drop measurement. That combination, 0.67, one of the highest pressure drops I've ever actually measured. So it is totally unbreathable. It's really hard to breathe in. So does double masking work? Yes, but you still need a good surgical mask, and you want to have a mask that's not really, it's just acting as a brace. So when you pick your cloth mask for your double masking, it needs to be like the thinnest mask. It needs a good nose wire, but like you should hold it up to light and see light through it. If this has a polypropylene layer inside of it to help improve the filtration, it's going to be even harder to breathe in. I think there are better solutions, and that's where mask fitters come. So mask fitters are also another good solution when we think about ways to improve a surgical mask. So we talked about that with the double masking solution, like I talked about previously, is that we can use this cloth mask to attach it to our face, but it adds more pressure drop. Well, what if we could just hold that surgical mask to our mouth and face without having the expense of an extra pressure drop because we're using some other fitting device? And that's where mask fitters come in. So, and I forgot to mention in just prior that the double masking does work. So we do see a significant improvement in filtration efficiency, but it comes at the expense of pressure drop. And relative to, let's say, a 3M or a 3M mask or the Mask Lab, like that pressure drop isn't really much better, and those actually provide even better filtration efficiency. I had forgot to actually mention that that both of those masks were providing 98+% versus we were only getting 90%. So I think in general it's better to go with those for a long-term wear solution. But if you have surgical masks and you're thinking about a way to improve them, then mask fitters come in. And I have a few options today. So I have the Badger mask. Now the Badger mask comes from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm from the University of Minnesota, so there's a little bit of rivalry. So maybe my opinions are biased, but I'll talk about this one. These go onto your face. I'll also talk about a 3D printed one that came from a company called Bellis 3D. They it lets you use an iPhone scanner to make a little mask fitting device that will go on your face. That's pretty cool. It's a 3D scan. And there's also the 3D Fix the Mask. Now the Fix the Mask is kind of hard to display because it kind of looks like a globally gloop of stuff. Once you install it, it makes a little bit more sense. So let's use Aaron 2.0. Here we go. Look at that. So it takes too long to install on my face, so that's why I'm using Aaron 2.0. So in this case, it just has a nose bridge that seals, and it's elastomeric, so it seals tight. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each one of these quickly, and then we'll talk about mask fitters in general. So the data set for this one, and I have to move forward here, we'll start with the Fix the Mask. So I think in general, it's probably the best solution out there. So the reason that I like this one the most, if you're going to go a mask fitting route, is that it's silicone, it's elastomeric, so it fits you and you can talk. So as you talk, this jaw piece will move down. And so that's kind of nice. It fits a variety of face sizes relative to, they have like a large, a medium, probably a small, and they have like a long jaw, because the distance from here to here is going to be important about how tight this is. Too tight, and it's just going to feel like it's jamming your jaw together. This is actually the medium installed. I actually wore the large. I think it provides an excellent fit. Now, Sabrina, who had sent this for me from Fix the Mask, so thank you for sending that, has some good data about, they've done some mask fit testing. Fit testing. Can't get it out today. Fit testing. And we had talked about that in my previous video, what it mask fit. And they were getting like hundreds and 200s on a variety of face sizes. And I think that makes sense because you have this like nice flexible material that can easily fit a variety of faces, and it's basically sealing it well to your face. The only thing from my perspective, all day comfort from this versus, let's say, a well-fitting KF94, to be completely honest, I think it's easy for a long 8-hour plus thing. I think I still prefer this. But if you have a bunch of surgical masks, or you're in a situation like your work, I've heard about this from quite a few people now, that hospitals are not allowing people to wear these in the mask. They're only allowed to be wearing surgical masks. So if you're in a medical setting and you're only allowed a surgical mask, this is a great solution to make sure that surgical masks provide you some protection. So that might be another option. Or if you have a ton of surgical masks, or you're looking for maximum seal. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So I think that's my pick of the two, but some pros and cons of each. It also is the most expensive. I believe it's $16 for those. So let's talk about the Badger mask. Now, the Badger mask is an open source design, so you can actually go pull it off of their website. But I bought this one from TabSynth. They're a company that's manufacturing them, so that you don't have to go make your own. And the basic idea is pretty simple. I'll just wear it without the surgical mask, so it's easy to see. This piece here is like, I'm not sure, I forgot to look it up, but it's a moldable material inside, like a metal wire inside this rubber piece. And then this jaw piece goes on there. It's actually very similar to the Fix the Mask concept about getting that surgical mask to seal. Now, the only thing I've noticed is it's not quite as comfortable. It's a little tight this way. It's great for short term. So if you're looking for a short term solution to wear with a surgical mask, this Badger mask is a good option. Also cheap. I think it was like $6. So the other option, which I thought would be super, super cool, but kind of turned out not quite as cool as I thought. I'll test it here with an actual mask on. This is the Bellis 3D, and I'll throw up a little video of me showing like the face scan result of this. So what it does is measure, use an iPhone 11 with the Face ID. They're measuring your face with, I believe, a dot projection type system to get some topography information. And it measured the 3D profile of my face. And then it gives you an STL file, which allow you to 3D print this. And so this was actually 3D printed by my friend John, who also printed, I'm a coworker too, also printed Aaron 2.0. So John, big shout out to you. Thank you for printing all this for me. So this allowed the face scan to fit this to your perfect face. And I will say, it unequivocally fits my face wonderfully. Kind of. So when I install it, and I put the crappy tie straps on here because I was trying to like adjust the length, and I just kind of ran out of time. So it's not as beautifully done with all this hanging dangly stuff, but ignore that for the moment being. So it fits great. My complaint is that it measures the topography of your face, but not the underlying bone structure. So this thing right here sits right against my cheekbone, and after wearing it for like 20 minutes, it just sits against my cheekbone. It hurts. So it's a cool idea because it measures the topography of a face, but there's two things. It's not just the topography of the face, it's also like the bone structure underneath. And it's not accounting for bone structure differences, which makes this thing kind of hard. And since it's hard plastic, and this is printed in PLA, it's still pretty hard to do. But let's talk about the data. So we'll throw it up here. So I did the same test with an I did all of my base data on this with an Ambra surgical mask. I'm going to pull this off. It's a little easier to talk. This is one of the reasons also I don't like surgical masks. They don't talk very well. So it's not my favorite solution. The mask collapse and touching your mouth drives me nuts, so I'm just going to take it off. So I use the Ambra surgical mask. This is a US-made manufacturer of surgical masks. So we kind of use this as my baseline. So if I wore just this mask, I was getting 63.7% with 0.27-inch pressure drop. So that's a pretty good nose wire, decent. But again, you get leakage here. It just leaks all around the mask. So now when I go ahead and I install, let's say, the Badger mask, it goes up to 97.2. And I got a 1/2 inch of pressure drop for that one. This mask with the Bellis 3D mask, which I have over here, this combination, 97.5. Okay, not that surprising. It's showing that we have a good seal and we're just limited by the media at this point. And if I did this with the Fix the Mask, I got 97.0. So basically, the range of filtration efficiencies I got with this armbrust mask is 97 to 97.5. Okay, so that's pretty small depending on the fitter. So all the fitters work. It's really gated by the quality of the surgical mask, and the pressure drop is all pretty much the same, 0.41 to 0.5, which highlights my pressure drop measurement's kind of crappy. So they all work I think in general, if you're going to wear long term, I think the Fix the Mask is the better option. It's just a little bit more professional. It has all the other features. It's elastomeric. The only challenge you'll have is getting the right size. They have a few different sizes, and I think they'll give some guidance about how to measure some facial features to get that. So whether it's a medium, large, or long jaw, they also have an option, which is I think it's related to the distance from here to here. So really cool design. I think that's the way I would go if you're going to do that, because why, you know, if you're just looking for something short term, just double mask it. If you're looking for to wear a surgical mask long term, then a Fix the Mask type solution I think is the way to go. But the key thing is, well, you still need good surgical masks. So since my goal of this project is to get protective masks, and even though this isn't my favorite approach, I'll still provide you some great data. So I tested a variety of surgical masks. I tested the Armbrust, the Lutima, the Zubrex. Oh, this is the Zubrex. Sorry, I just got to check the link. The Zubrex, and my personal favorite, and this data shows it, not shockingly, our friends at Mask Lab made a damn good mask. So let's jump into the details. So we'll just go through them one at a time. So Mask Lab mask takes the win for sure. So to save everyone the time. So this mask, as worn, I got 78. Oh, sorry, I had the ear loops pretty tight on this mask. So when I installed it, 78.3% for my test drops on my face, and a 0.16 inch pressure drop. So pretty dang low, of course, but 78% ain't nothing to talk about because it's just leaking past it. If I put the Fix the Mask on top of it, we're getting 97.1%. So that's really good. I mean, that's up there with what I normally get with their KF series mask. And pressure drop of 0.22, which is also really good because I normally get a pressure drop with their Mask Lab mask with the updated nose wire at 0.23. So they're really, really similar. Probably using the same media would be my guess. So this is by far the most breathable mask surgical mask. So if you're looking for surgical masks, I would look at the Mask Lab one if you're going to go Fix the Mask style, or just if you're looking at surgical masks in general. The only thing is they're a little bit more stiffer on the outside. They're less pliable than the mask, but generally, I mean, they're using some really good media in here. Mask manufacturers, pay attention. They have good media. The other mask that I think performed really well was the Zubrex. So the Zubrex mask, which should have a black mark. Here it goes. This is the Zubrex mask. The Zubrex mask as worn. Now this was kind of shocking to me because when I got the data, I was like, I don't believe it either. This mask happens to fit my face really well. And I don't know exactly why, but I actually get a seal. I got 93.7%. And I can tell that because it does. It fits pretty well around all my face, and you can watch the mask suck. See how it just, boom, seals against my face? So it actually benefits at that, except it's touching my lips, which drive me nuts. 0.24 inch pressure drop. When I go to Fix the Mask, this goes up to 96.5 at 0.35. So higher than the Mask Lab, but still pretty good. I think so this is another good option in terms of protection. The other option that I thought actually probably did a little bit better than that is the Lutima. I'm kind of keeping shocked that actually these masks are really good. Again, maybe it's just because it's orange. I don't think it is. The media is good inside these masks. So the Lutima mask, as worn, remember, we're getting ranges all over the place, but for this test that day, I got 73.5%. When I put the Fix the Mask on there, I get 94.40 with a 0.24 inch pressure drop. So that's actually 0.24 inch pressure drop. So that actually is pretty dang good. So if I had to pick my top surgical mask, it's going to be one of those three. The Armbrust is actually pretty good too in terms of filtration efficiency, but it has a little bit higher pressure drop. So the Armbrust came in as worn, 63.7. Again, that doesn't mean anything because the filtration efficiency of the media doesn't matter if it all leaks around it. So I was getting 63.7% with a 0.27 inch pressure drop. When I go to Fix the Mask with this, it's good media in terms of filtration efficiency, 97%. However, when we look at the pressure drop, it goes up to 0.41, which is one of the higher of the masks we tested. So it's kind of the trade-off that you always kind of make. Like if you use really good media or thicker GSM media to get higher filtration efficiency, comes with the impact of pressure drop, with the exclusion of if you go to a different style of media. Mask Lab is using something, if you watch my Mask Lab interview, they hear them talking about hydrocharged media and that they're using that, and it seems to highlight that that's some good stuff. You get way better pressure drop with hydrocharged media than the classic Corona charged electrostatic. So, but I think it's still a great option for Armbrust, a protective Zubrex, but it still highlights that you need to wear a good mask when you're doing this. Now, I also did test the Zehushi, which again, we'll pretend this is it, but it's actually not. This is the Zubrex mask. Let's pretend this is the Zehushi. I grabbed the wrong one. So the Zehushi mask, which is not rated, well, it is rated. It's the Chinese YY something standard. I'll put a star on the bottom. That mask, which normally comes in, I was getting anywhere in the range of like 40 to 60%, depending on the time I test it. That mask combined with the Fix the Mask. So I do this mask plus the Fix the Mask, not the hold, but the actual device. So this combination. 83%. Now, why is that? Well, we know that Fix the Mask gave me a great seal. It should. It's elastomeric. It basically just gets a perfect seal. But I only got 83%. Why? Well, because the media in that mask is not really that great. And so my test aerosol is on the small side. So of course, it's always hard to say, well, what would you get if it was half micron versus the 60 nanometer non-neutralized aerosol that I use? It's hard to say. But it highlights that, well, the pressure drop on that particular mask was also 0.24. So if I had to choose between a mask that gave me 80% at 0.24 and a mask like this, or the Lutima, or this, all of these have the same pressure, roughly the same pressure drop. Why would I not pick the one that gives me the best performance, right? Unless that one had a really low pressure drop. So it highlights that you still have to pick a good surgical mask, because any old surgical mask out there, and I think Lloyd is doing, Lloyd Armbrust, the owner of Armbrust Surgical Mask, had bought like $4,000 of Amazon surgical masks and masks. And he has an actual real tester, so he's gonna go through and do some media level tests on those. I'm interested to see what the results are. So I mean, I think all the masks I'm listening to are highly protective. I think they would all work great against COVID when combined with a mask fitter. So that is one option. Now, what is the con to all mask fitters? In the end of the day, I think I prefer just a classic KF style mask. This is still my go-to. This is the extended nose wire version from MaskLab. I think for all day comfort, I had tried the mask fitter at home here for a few hours. You know, and the Fix the Mask specifically, it is comfortable enough. But I noticed that the elastomeric portion that's pushing up against your jaw fights it when you open, and it kind of tired my jaw out a little bit more. And it's just, you can feel it more compressive to your face. It gives you an excellent seal. I will never argue that. Perfect seal. But I don't know if we're always after, I mean, it depends on your risk averseness. So for me, the convenience of being able to just pop this mask on and off in a second versus the head loop version, not that it's super difficult to install, but I will give you a quick example. Let's see, I've gotten pretty good at it. So, and Sabrina will probably say, oh, you could have done it faster if you did this, so I apologize in advance. You know, it's not like super complex to install, but you do have to like kind of work it a little bit. So, you know, it's not terrible, but it is kind of like a little bit more complex. So if I just want to take a drink of water, or I'm getting in another car, like, you know, it's not quite as easy to take off this mask. You can do it. You have to go like this, take your drink of water, hook the ear loop back up, set the nose bridge, put it back on, you know, like do this, do this, do this. Okay, so can it be done? Yes. So I think there's some pros and cons. Whatever decision you make, they're both protective. And I think that's why I spent the time to review them and test them, is at the end of the day, everyone has different opinions. It's like shoes. There's different types of shoes. There's work shoes, there's fashion shoes, there's tennis shoes, there's running shoes. All of them have unique applications. So at the end of the day, you need some protection on your feet. And the amount of protection that you're searching for at this point in time is like, we want a good work boot. Now, whether that's a work boot that's a Red Wing, nice leather work boot, or a steel toe, maybe a little bit cheaper kind of Walmart-y work boot, you know, like, hey, there's a whole spectrum here. At the end of the day, we need good, high quality protection. And you can get it with these as well. There's trade-offs and there's pros and cons, and I'm just trying to provide an oversight to that. So thanks everyone for hanging around. Hopefully I made this in under 20 minutes. I doubt it. I think we just went a little bit over. Next week we're going to cover, the next video I'm going to cover, hopefully Aaron 2.0 test data, but I also have a ton of 3M, I have some 3M KN style NIOSH approved mask. Wow, that's a lot of words. I have a whole bunch of stuff that I tested over the last couple of weeks. We'll be going through those review videos. So hang tight. I have a couple more, and then I hopefully will be done for a little while. I think we're coming to the end of my mask testing videos. I don't know what else I'm going to cover. I'm not sure I want to cover much more. We'll maybe have some counterfeit masks that I got coming on the way. So keep an eye out for that. I ordered a bunch of the cheapest Amazon buttons out there just to see how many come in fake. I can guarantee you 2 have already because they came from China. Because they don't ship from China. There's no way. So who knows what I'm going to get. They're going to take 2 weeks to get here. So hang tight. Thanks, everybody. And as usual, if you have comments, throw them in the comment box. You can like and you can subscribe to this if you want. If it's bicycle videos, then I'm back to pandemic is over. And so we don't have to talk about this anymore. I'll try to answer as many comments as I can. I can't always guarantee it. If you don't hear a response, throw another comment in there. I'll try my best. The comment system is not great on YouTube. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the next video. Thank you.